Hello grade 8s. In this tutorial screencast I'm going to give you an example of how to make your screencast to teach people how to make your flag. So here is the draft flag, the draft design that I'm going to turn into my final product. So I will first of all go to FireAlpaca, and the first thing I did was open up the flag of Ecuador, because my flag was based on the flag of Ecuador. So I opened that up in a new file. I then used the eyedropper tool to select the colors that I wanted to use. Once the color had been selected, well, I can either write down the red, green and blue values, these RGB values, or I can just make sure that my palette is displayed. So we go Window, Palette, and now whatever color is here in the foreground, if I click New in the palette, let me just show you. There's the palette. If I click New, this color will appear with the same red, green, blue RGB values. And then I click here, get the blue, add that to the palette as well. And I'll click the red and add that to the palette also. And I think I'll take the brown too. Might need to just zoom in a bit there. Let's take a bit of brown from the vulture and add that as well. I might use that. Okay, so the next thing I did was I looked at the dimensions of my, just looking for my portfolio, there we are. So the next thing I did was look for the dimensions of this flag, and this was created in an 8:3. So we go back to FireAlpaca and we go File, New, and I could do it as, 8:5. So I could do 800 to 500, or it would be better if I double those. So I go 1600 to 1000. The first thing I did was use the Select tool, Rectangle, and I selected the yellow tool, and actually I could use this tool this time, but I did actually use the rectangular select to select the entire canvas, and then I used the paint pot tool to fill that in. I press Ctrl and D to deselect. Just going to zoom out a little bit. The next thing I did was I drew the red triangle here in the middle. Oh, actually, sorry, the next thing was the blue triangle, actually. So we come back over here and we'll select the blue color, and I'm going to go for Select tool again, but this time I'm going to choose a polygon. I'm going to turn off anti-aliasing, and I'm going to make sure that round corner is off. I then went View, Guides, so now I know where the center of the screen is, and this was 1/3 of the distance from the top of the volcano to the top of the flag. Now, because there's no rulers in FireAlpaca, I just have to estimate 1/3. So I start by putting my cursor about 1/3 of the way from the top. This is the center of the page, and then I drew into the corners. That looks a little bit short, so I'm just going to press Escape, come down a little bit more, about there. I draw it through the corners, and click, and click, and this time I want it to come back up here. I have to double click, so double click, and I'm going to fill that area in with the blue color, like that. Actually, I'm going to undo that because I want to put that on a different layer to give me a bit more control. So I add a layer, and now I'm going to put the blue volcano on that other layer. So you can see now that if I deselect, you can see that we've got a yellow background, a blue volcano, and I can even call that background. I'll call this Volcano Blue. And the next thing on my design, I'm using Alt Tab, by the way, to flick between this little red triangle here. So let's just look at the proportions for that. That looks like this is just under halfway, isn't it? So that's the halfway line. This is just under halfway, and we're going to construct that using the Select tool as a polygon again. And this is just a bit of guesswork, really. I want the blue to be fairly thick, and I also want these edges to be parallel. So that looks about right. To there, to there. Okay. And I'm going to start a new layer, and I'm going to call this lava red. And we take the red color and we'll fill that in too. Deselect. Okay, that looks okay. The red thing, it's not quite perfect. You can see that this edge here and this edge, they're not parallel. But it's okay for the moment. What else could I have done there? Yeah, I could have done something. There is another way I could do that, but that will do for now. The next thing I did was I found a picture of a finch here. I'm going to load that up. I found it using Google image search. So I'm just going to open that up. It's actually a Darwin finch. So I first of all used this picture, and then I drew around it using the marquee tool, the selection tool, freehand. Okay, I drew around it really carefully, unlike that. Okay, I'll just do a rough outline. There we go. And I started a new layer again. And then I filled in with a big fat pen in a dark color. And I should be able to draw over this now. Can't draw here because it's not selected. I can only draw over the finch. Okay, so the outline shape is not very good, but that was the method I used. And if I'd taken more care to draw carefully, that would look better. So we'll go Control D to deselect. We can turn off that, and you can see that's approximately the shape of a finch. That was actually how I got this shape here. Okay, I was just a bit more careful with how I drew it. So I press Control A, Control C to copy, and I'm going to go up here. I'm using a shortcut mouse wheel on the file names till I get to the flag. I press Control V, and then I press Control T to transform the bird to get it into a good position. I could also change the size and then reposition. Now, so back up here, mouse wheel. Let's apply that transformation that we just did. I like that. Mouse wheel, and we now need a finch facing the opposite direction, so we press Edit, flip horizontally, Control A to select everything, Control C to recopy, and then we're going to zip over and paste that in, and then we're going to Control T to transform that shape. I need to get them about the same size, well, exactly the same size, and we need to make it be approximately symmetrical. That looks pretty good. Control D, press Enter to select, to accept the transformation. View, show comic guidelines, we want to toggle that off. And that is our final flag. Okay, it's not perfect. You can see there's a little glitch there. And these lines are not parallel, but it's pretty good. It's as good as I can get it with this software. So the very last thing I did was save as, and I went to my Google Drive, saved it into my flags, and I gave it a sensible name, Galapagos flag. Save it as an MDB file. Okay, there we go. And that is how I made my flag. That is the end of my screencast. Thank you for watching.